Have you told your friends that you see ghosts?
Oh, absolutely not.
Gina Rodriguez returns in Not Dead Yet.
I'm back, baby.
Who is that?
Oh, she's the obituary writer.
And Brad Garrett joins the brilliant ensemble cast.
Titan, Maverick, Titan of all Mavericks. These are all words used to describe me.
Not Dead Yet. Season premiere. Tonight, 8:30, 7:30 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.
It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
We love answering your questions. Podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. That's podcasts with an S at happyfamilies.com.au. Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm here with my wife, mum to our 6 kids, Kylie. Kylie, we've got a listener question that is just one of those big challenges, especially if you're raising tween and teen girls. This is the question. I recently hosted a birthday party for my 13-year-old stepdaughter in my home. She invited 3 close friends. Now, there's an asterisk here, Kylie, and it says her closest friends only became a friendship group this year at the start of high school. So we're talking about a fairly new friendship. 13 years old, about to head into grade 8. It became apparent to me as the weekend progressed that she was on the outer of this group. She seemed to have no input or influence. Her thoughts and suggestions were disregarded or just not acknowledged. For example, what movie to watch or what shops to go to. There was some teasing. It wasn't excessive, but it hurt her. Physically, I could see the disconnection as the other 3 friends sat and slept together, wrestled each other, hugged, laughed, and shared. The group dynamic became painful for my stepdaughter, and she was upset. How do we help her move from the outer of her friendship group to inner circle? How involved should us parents get, and how? And there's a part B to this. I'm also wondering if we need to reverse a decision we made about keeping her off Snapchat. It is a social tool that this group uses to communicate daily. We're feeling a bit deflated after what should have been a very positive weekend. We'd love your thoughts. What stands out to you? So many places we can go with this.
So many places.
And it's such a thoughtful question. I just love this question.
So my number one tip, based on personal experience over years and years with all of the girls, is nothing ever good comes out of a sleepover.
Yeah, right.
It just never does.
Yep.
That's my first point. And my second would be limiting time. We think that creating this big adventure weekend, whatever that looks like, is going to be a positive. But what we actually need to do is limit the time our kids have together in some kind of structured activity.
Yep.
So that they're left wanting. We're about creating
less is more.
Memories together in a structured. It's tricky with teenagers because they don't want structure. They just want hangout. But when there is relationships are forming, you actually need structure to create experiences that bond.
Okay. And I like the idea of structure as well. Even if you're not going to do something specific, like an activity, we're going to go and do this thing today. Just saying we're going to get together for 90 minutes and having a time frame, because as I said when I sort of jumped in over the top of you, less is more. It's much better to leave them wanting more than to give them an entire weekend of sleepover where they're going to go, oh my goodness, I don't care if I never see these people again.
They eat a whole heap of junk food. Their bodies do not deal with it.
Yep.
They don't sleep. Their bodies don't deal with it. Now that social media plays such a huge part in our kids' lives with screens, again, there's just this massive opportunity for fallout, for being left out and excluded, and then obviously all of the other stuff that comes with social media.
So let me just summarise what you've said. What you've effectively said is you're not a big fan of this. I mean, we've raised 6 daughters, right? So we've really lived through this. Well, we're living through it for the 5th time right now. We've got one more time to go. But you're saying absolutely get the kids together, but sleepovers create clickiness, they create fatigue, they create a whole lot of, it's like a melting pot of all the bad stuff, really.
Well, you think about when our children act up the worst, you've got that acronym HALTS.
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, stressed.
And you pretty much put them into that situation, except for the hungry part, because they'll eat
Yeah, but
way more food than they should. But
it's not nutritionally dense
exactly
food.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. But I like what you're saying with focusing on hangouts and having less time together, but doing it more frequent and even structuring it, especially as relationships are developing. I wrote a book a few years ago called Misconnection: Why Your Teenage Daughter Hates You, Expects the World, and Needs to Talk. And one of the first questions that I asked like 400 teenage girls was, what's the best thing about being a teenage girl? The number one thing that they said, friends. Like they just love their friends. They said things like, I have a very good, strong group of friends who I love and can talk to very easily. The best thing about being a teenage girl is that I have the right amount of responsibility and freedom. I have enough for my parents to trust me to go out and have fun with my friends or whatever, but I also have not too much that I'm expected to pay bills and do other boring adult stuff.
So here's the scary thing though. So many of our girls can't say that.
Well,
friends are their number one, and yet they don't have that safety net of good friends.
And that's what I was going to say. The next question that I asked the girls was, what do you worry about the most? And you know the number one answer?
Friends.
My friends. Yeah. So my friends are my favorite thing about being a teenage girl, but my friends are also the thing that I worry about most because I'm feeling so insecure. And let me just read this to you to highlight how this works for them. One girl said, I worry that people don't like me. Another one said, I worry that none of my friends really like me. Another one said, I worry about whether I'll have friends soon. Another one said, I worry about how my close friends actually see me. I have a massive fear that everyone around me is just putting up with me until I leave them alone. And you can hear that insecurity. You can hear almost the terror, like, oh my goodness. Like friends are oxygen to our kids.
And I've watched this with our girls. In our own home, there's almost this acknowledgement, I would rather have bad friends than not have friends at all.
Right.
You know, and this scenario, this specific scenario, we watched this unfold in our home before our very eyes. And this notion that our daughter would prefer to be treated badly than to feel invisible. Was just so apparent. And as we were able to kind of talk with her and sit with her after the event, she was quite defensive because she thought her friends were the bee's knees. It took her a few months before she started to actually be open to seeing what was actually happening.
You've just reminded me of a really important study. Didn't think of this before, but so valuable. One of my colleagues and friends, Chris Nemick from the University of Rochester, we caught up with him and went to Niagara Falls some years ago when we had the opportunity to head overseas. Chris did a study probably about 10 years ago now, talking about friends as forbidden fruit. So what he basically said was, as parents step in and become more controlling and say, I don't like those friends, I don't think they're good friends, I don't think they treat you well, I don't think they're leading you down good paths, kids are repelled by parents and pushed towards those very friends, even if they're, I'm going to use the word bad in inverted commas, even if they're quote unquote bad friends.
So you and I both, we don't believe in bad kids. We don't believe in bad friends as such, but we recognize that sometimes two personalities, they don't work well together.
Yeah.
With insecurities, challenges, whatever else is going on, sometimes our kids just don't work together well. They don't bring out the best in each other.
Which again points to the advantage that you've highlighted of getting the kids together frequently, but for short periods of time, and sometimes having structured activities so that they can build a relationship around those activities rather than sitting there and staring at their phones and saying, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. I'm bored. What should we do? I don't know. I've got nothing to do either. Something that you mentioned to me when we were chatting about where we could go with this conversation, I really, really love. You emphasized the importance of one-on-one time together. And as a mum of 6 daughters, this one really, it created a cascade of ideas in my head. Tell me why you recommend one-on-one, especially for tween and teen girls.
It is so hard to build strong relationships, strong connections with a group of people. You are less likely to show up as your real self because you are so concerned about everybody else in the room. And you're not going to open up your heart. You're not going to share everything when there's a room full of people because you don't actually know where all of those people stand.
It's harder to build trust.
And how they feel about what you're about to share. So those one-on-one connections are really, really important to build confidence and trust in the relationships, which then flows into your friendship circles.
This doesn't just apply to kids
No.
and teen girls. Two learnings from our lives. Number one, when I turned 30, so we're going back a little while now, but on my 30th birthday, you organised a wonderful birthday party in our backyard, a surprise party, had a whole lot of people come over, close friends, family. I mean, it was just fabulous. The work that you put in, the way you did it was incredible, but I still remember feeling a little bit flat and empty at the completion of the party when everyone went home for one central reason. I didn't really get to have any great conversations with anybody. I talked to pretty much everybody that night, but they were also brief and superficial and interrupted. And we have worked out in our preference system that if we're going to go out and have dinner or if we're going to have people over, we prefer to have no more than 6 people at the table. 4 is ideal, 6 as a maximum, because with the smaller numbers, you get to have much more meaningful conversations. So you and I, if we invite one other couple over, usually you'll talk to the wife and I'll spend time talking to the husband, and we'll have some time together as a group as well. But the relationship is deep. But if you've got 10 people having a barbecue, the quality of the interaction, the quality of the connection has to be diminished. It has to be reduced. So one-on-one is a fantastic idea. Something else that can be really useful that I think we want to encourage, but it gets harder as the kids move into high school, is just knowing who the parents are, actually having time with the parents, saying, hey, let's get together and go down to the park with the kids, or let's get together and have an event, have a barbecue, go for a walk along the beach, whatever it is, wherever you are, the activities that work. Getting families together and getting to know the families can do wonders for helping the kids to consolidate a relationship, because when they see the adults are getting on and the adults have a relationship of trust, it models for them what they need.
And I think too, sometimes, especially with girls, I don't think we see it so much with boys, but there's this idea, if I catch up with one friend and I'm in a group of 4 or 5 people, that it feels like they're being excluded. And so by bringing families into it, it's not an exclusion at your daughter's instigation. It's a family dynamic, and that changes the perception of those experiences together.
Okay, there's one more thing that I want to mention just briefly about girls or kids and friendship groups. And it has to do with this idea of moving from the outer to the inner circle. I just don't love the phrasing of that. I know what the mum is saying. She doesn't want her daughter to feel left out. But we've done something consistently with our kids, sometimes successfully, other times not, where we have talked about creating your own circle rather than trying to move into other people's circles. Very, very challenging. But there's a couple of questions that I love to ask parents around this to discuss with their kids. And those questions essentially relate to how you feel about you. Do you feel like you can be you when you're with these kids? The questions are, number one, do I like who I am? Do I like myself when I'm around these people? If you're spending time with people where you don't like yourself, you have to change who you are, you have to adapt and mold yourself, probably not the right group to be trying to move from the outer to the inner on anyway. And the second question, do I feel like I'm being true to who I am when I'm around these people? Because if there's any need to sacrifice values and change who you are, again, good chance that this is potentially not the group for you. Hard conversations to have. And like you said, when we went through this with some of our kids, it didn't happen overnight. It was a couple of months, and we didn't badger them. It was just a soft conversation here and there.
I think, yeah, just an observation, sharing observations. It was never, you can't be friends with these people, they're bad kids or anything like that. It was just an acknowledgement, when your friends were over, this is what I noticed. What did you notice? And it's a little bit of a tangent, but when you and I started dating, you came up with an acronym that has actually played a huge part in our lives. And funnily enough, without you sharing it with me, I had come up with the same conclusion, just didn't have the fancy acronym to go with it. But you talked about this idea of BMX, being more exceptional.
Yeah, do the people I'm with make me want to be a better version of me?
And that was the sticking point. Out of all of the guys that I had seen or liked, you were the person that made me feel like I wanted to be better. I wanted to be better when I was in your presence. I wanted to improve and grow and learn more when I was in your presence than any other person I'd been with. And if we can instill that in our kids, help them to recognize that the people we want to fight for, to have in our lives, are the people that make us want to be better people. They actually elevate us, and we can do the same for others. That's more powerful than any other conversation we can have.
Okay, we are out of time, but we do need to talk about Snap real quick. Snapchat, I'm going to just put it out there. I hate it. It's the world that our kids are in, but what it does is it amplifies the issues that they're facing and are confronted by. So just by virtue of saying, well, all my friends are on it and I need to be on it so I can communicate with them, that's not going to necessarily improve their friendships and relationships. In fact, it will only amplify the differential that exists there.
Well, I think based on the experiences Mum has had, what I see is you are just taking that scenario from your lounge room into a more private...
into the palm of their hand, in their bedroom, in the bathroom, wherever they've got their phones, that they shouldn't have them.
And the experiences that she's having now physically are not going to change because she's got Snapchat.
But we also have to acknowledge that it is the world that kids are living in, and they do feel tremendously isolated without it. And if they really want it, as girls told me when I wrote that book, Misconnection, they'll just download it when they leave the house and then delete it when they get home. Like, kids are savvy enough to know how to do that sort of stuff, and they do it all the time. I think when it comes to Snapchat, I'm just looking at it and thinking, why do you want it? Do you want it because you're running towards something wonderful? Or do you want it because you're
afraid,
fearful of exclusion? And if you want it for positive things, then it's a different conversation. But if you're wanting it because of negative things, I don't think it's helpful. Of course, trying to explain that to a 13-year-old who feels like she has no friends is an extremely hard thing to do. But conversations, tricky conversations, ongoingly and honestly, probably the best way forward. We really hope that these ideas are helpful for any parents who are dealing with friendship issues as school wraps up for the year and we start to work out how we're going to get the kids social across summer. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. For more information about making your family happier, check out our blog with so many articles to help you around this. Everything's at happyfamilies.com.au or visit our Happy Families Facebook page, Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families.